welcome back. I am here with my sister, Emily Guy Birkin, no hyphen.
And I'm here with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, yes hyphen.
And we are doing a show we're calling Lightbringers, where we illuminate the deeper meaning of the crime-solving devil TV show. And yes, we are overthinking it. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about season 1, episodes 2 and 3, which are entitled Lucifer Stay, Good Devil. That's number 2. And The Would-Be Prince of Darkness, number 3.
Yes.
And you told me that you have some thoughts.
I have some things to say. Yes.
Let's hear it.
So on Twitter recently, there was a conversation that I saw talking about how often you will see there's a pattern of TV shows that have pretty much all white casts or very not particularly diverse casts. And then what the showrunners do is they hire a whole heck of a lot of extras who are non-white. And so there are a lot of Black extras, and they kind of, it's just this stutter step towards trying to be diverse without actually doing it. Now, Lucifer does have a pretty diverse central cast. I think that they do a reasonably good job with that. But after having read that on Twitter, watching Lucifer Stay, Good Devil, and then we'd already talked ahead of time about how kind of like the trilogy of the pilot in these 2 episodes is a little...
Yeah, there's some work to be done.
There's some work to be done.
To be clear, friends, Emily and I talked about that. We didn't talk about it on the show.
Yes. So, and Tracie and I talk quite a bit about social justice, particularly as it pertains to Black liberation and things like that. And so between the way Lucifer responded to Too Vile, which was a little
in the pilot,
off in the pilot,
right, where he says that he doesn't like rap music, but then says, but it's not all Black people, it's specifically
youth
and Too Vile.
Mm-hmm. And then in Lucifer Stay, Good Devil, and The Would-Be Prince of Darkness, the bad guy in both cases turns out to be a Black man, or a Black presenting man in the case of Lucifer Stay, Good Devil. So watching, after having you and I discussing that, and then having that thing that I read on Twitter in my head, I was watching, and the first scene when Lucifer shows up at Lux, all 3 of the extras he greets are Black. Yes. So he gets out of his car and he says, "Hey, Donald," or it's something like that. And
the car.
Well, no, he shakes the hand, shakes the hand, gives kind of like a hug. Then as he's walking through the club, he like makes eye contact and kind of does like a flirty smile at a woman who is Black. And then while Chloe is taking pictures of him, he's shaking hands with another man who was honestly a little racially ambiguous, but appeared to be Black to me, and it was not clear. And then I started like writing down everyone I saw, and there were there was the Asian police officer at the front desk when he first goes to talk to Nick Hoffmeister, and the doctor at Jimmy Barnes's hospital at the end was a Black woman. And I know that there's kind of a trope of like judges are always Black women in a lot of like Law and Order type shows and things like that. That's a joke that I've heard before, specifically on 30 Rock, talking about that. But that was one of those things that what I saw on Twitter was saying, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I was like, you're right. I can't unsee that.
Yeah.
And so I found that pretty interesting, particularly with this early on in Lucifer. We have Amenadiel, who, becomes a very, very important protaganist, but he is an antagonist.
He is very, but at this stage, he is very much an antagonist. Yeah. And keep going.
So we have Maze, who is clearly devoted to Lucifer, but there's another aspect of it as well that I was reading about, something that is often problematic in books and entertainment written by white folks is that there will be a Black character who is just supportive of the white protagonist
and has no identity aside from being their friend.
Yes.
And Maze clearly
Maze
fits that.
Fits that as of right now. And so, and then with the way that Lucifer responds to rap, the suggestion that Lucifer Morningstar would be a good hip hop name in that first episode, that's a little off. And so in these first few episodes, Ty Huntley in the third one, the quarterback, the star quarterback, is possibly the only like just generally beneficial good portrayal of someone who is non-white. And then we also get into Dan.
Someone who's Black. I think we need to actually be very precise here, because I think the implication is that I think it's intended that Dan is Latino.
Yes.
Which makes Trixie also Latino.
Yes.
Latina.
And then I think that Joe Henderson and Ildi Modrovich are more aware of.
Yeah, I think I definitely think this show gets better regards to race. I mean, if nothing else, Amenadiel becomes a very not just a protagonist, but like what's the word I'm looking for? Endearing character,
sympathetic character.
That's the word. Thank you. Sympathetic character. And I think that alone, like DB Woodside is a Black man. Like he's not, there's no ambiguity. There's no racial ambiguity. DB Woodside is a dark-skinned Black man. And so I think having him as an angel who is a sympathetic character, I think that alone later in the series helps, is an anti-racist and equitable move. But at this stage, just the pilot and these two episodes that we're discussing today. Yeah. Some really, and to be fair, friends, like when I watched it, especially because like Emily introduced me to this show in 2019. So there were already 4 seasons when I started watching. So I binged it, which is what I think many of us either did or are doing now. And taking in the whole, like, I didn't see this. It's on this rewatching and this overthinking that I'm seeing it. Part of the reason I didn't see it is because of my white privilege, right? It doesn't affect me in the same way. And also because there are several Black cast members, even like the doctor at the end that you mentioned of the pilot, like of the second episode, like I did quietly make note of that, that it's not, if you don't know the storyline, if you're just seeing the images, like it is not an all white screen. And so that is part of,
we've come a long way from Friends in the 90s.
Right. And that's part of why it didn't register as problematic on first watch. So I think that's interesting. I also want to talk about, since in our last episode, when we talked about the pilot, we talked a lot about feminism and strong female characters. I wanted to briefly talk about Allie, the murder victim in The Would-Be Prince of Darkness, because now you and I talked offline about the fact some of the contemporaneous reviews of Lucifer like critiqued it for being a police procedural, which whatever, I'm not going to get into that. It is. And then there are others who like questioned the writing, which in general, I actually think this is a very well written show.
Yes.
Having said that, I'm going to question the writing for a moment. Allie, there's an implication that Lucifer like got invested in the case because he felt responsible, because he had pushed Ty toward Allie. I feel like that could have been even stronger and less, and make Allie less of an object and less disposable if there had been even a 45-second conversation between Lucifer and Allie that was other than, gosh, you're pretty, which is effectively in the much, fancier voice, what he said to her. And then about her, he said she's a sure thing to Ty. And so if there had been even just a moment of him to like make her laugh, or him make him laugh, or anything, even as much as what he had with the woman who at the beginning, in the very beginning of that episode, we think maybe he's trying to encourage her to
commit suicide,
kill herself, but in fact she's jumping into the pool. Even that would have been something to help both underscore why he was taking a personal interest in it, because he took there was some even momentary connection with the deceased. So it wasn't just about like Ty's victimhood. I feel like that could have really done a lot, and it wouldn't have taken a lot. It wouldn't have taken like a whole like long scene for that to just be tighter and slightly less misogynistic. So that was one thing that I wanted to like, especially after what we talked about in the first pilot, that I wanted to.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's of these two episodes, I feel like Lucifer Stay a Good Devil is much better written. The one with the paparazzi is for one thing, the thing that I really like about it is that there was no reason for him to get involved in that second case. Like he got involved in Delilah's death in the pilot, and it made sense because he was right there when she was shot.
He cared about her.
And he cared about her. But there was no reason for him to get involved, but they found a character-driven way that made sense for all the characters. It made complete sense for the character of Chloe, for her to be investigating him and show up at his club.
Yeah, surveilling him.
Yeah.
Or stalking if she weren't a police officer.
Yeah, exactly. And just considering who she is and how she's like, how the hell did you survive 6 gunshot wounds? I need to know more about you. Made sense for him to recognize that she was there and like use that to like, come here, you. And it made sense for his ego to be like, why do I not affect you? Like, oh, something did affect you. I need to know more about this. So all of that was very, very well written.
I agree.
And very character driven. Whereas the would-be Prince of Darkness, like at that point, like we've established that he has some sort of connection with her, and you know that he got her phone number. I actually, on this watch, when she answers the phone and it's him, she's like, how could that be him? How did you get this number? And Trixie gives this little smile. I'm like, oh, is that supposed to suggest Trixie gave it to him? Because I could see that. That is character driven.
Oh, cute. I didn't notice that.
But anyway, and so one of the things is the treatment of Allie is not as well written. And then that gets me into some of the things that I find a little bit weird, that so at Lux, there's half naked women dancing. That's part of what he has at the club. And so that is literally objectifying women.
Yeah.
You know, that's literally doing that. And the thing that I appreciate about the show is that Lucifer does not see people as objects, even if he doesn't connect with them, if you know what I mean. Like, and that's one of the big differences between Amenadiel and Lucifer. Like Amenadiel is just like, these are these little ants and they have nothing to do with me. And Lucifer is like, oh no, they're very interesting. Look at all the desires they have. I love it. And so he may not be able to see them as sentient creatures in the same way that he recognizes other celestials that way at the beginning. But there's still this weird tension. And it might just be tension within my own head about like, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of this, you know, club where there's half naked dancing women. What are we to do with that? You know,
interesting.
And it's
presumably though he's paying them.
He's paying them well.
Yes. Right. So like work is work.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Like at the annual conference that I go to every year, this is probably about 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. There was an off-site event at a bar where the women were dressed like the women dancing in Lucifer. The bartenders, they weren't dancers. They were bartenders dressed like that. And the men were wearing slacks and a shirt. And I was like, disgusted by this. I was horrified by it. And my roommate was like, I don't get why you have a problem with this. And like, we'd been talking about Beyonce's video Single Ladies. And like, I were looking at it. She's like, why are you okay with Beyonce wearing this when the women were at the bar were wearing about the same thing? I was like, well, because Beyonce is dancing and that's an outfit for dancing. It's not one for slinging beer, you know, like, my friend kept saying like, well, I feel like you're not giving enough credit to the women. They could always get another job. I'm like, but why?
I don't know that that's fair.
Yeah.
that doesn't seem fair to me. Or legitimate. Like,
so
if it is interesting. It's an interesting question, because I think I might want to push back on your suggestion that Lucifer doesn't treat people like objects. Because that's actually kind of what I'm reacting to, is that he did treat Allie like an object.
He did, yes.
When talking about her to Ty. I mean, it wasn't for his own sexual gratification. It was for somebody else's. But he certainly treated Allie as an object prior to her death.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know that I think the whole point of the show is that he grows. And I do think what's interesting to me as I'm overthinking this is that in my mind, that objectification with women is married to a violence against. Like the potential is always there. There's something, the two go hand in hand. And that is, I do believe, is absolutely missing. Like, I don't even, and that's later in the series, when he gets super angry at Linda because she's not letting him go, like, he punches the wall. It's never directed at her.
Well, and to that point, the murderer in that episode, it was connected.
Yes, absolutely.
His treating her as an object led to her death because he just squeezed too hard.
Right. And calling her a name, he called her a bitch. The murderer did, which I don't think, certainly not to the 3 episodes that we are talking about. Lucifer does not use that kind of language.
No.
Which is not to say I can't imagine him cursing, but I can't imagine him calling someone a name that way. And so I think that's maybe what you're saying. He doesn't like that is divorced from his characterization, but the objectification is not. And it's really interesting to me sociologically how difficult a time it is I'm having divorcing those two things. I think that's really says something about the pattern and the logical consequences of the objectification, is that it leads to violence and harm.
Yeah. Well, and that's worth examining, like, because of all of Lucifer's flaws and the way, as we get further along, the way that he uses women and men as sexual partners, we find out no one feels resentful about it.
Yep.
It's just like,
actually, I'm thinking about Lucifer Say Good Devil, with the paparazzi, and actually that's part of what is so bothersome to him, is that the Josh, who is the murderer, like, totally objectifies the people he's taking pictures of, and it causes harm. Like, they are just means to an end to him. And that is part of what is so disgusting to Lucifer about him.
Because he even says to Nick, the paparazzo that Chloe has a history with, that celebrities need you as much as they hate you. Like, he says, you do provide a service.
Well, that's even why he gives him his new nickname. Like, Chloe refers to him as cockroach. But Lucifer recasts it as a dung beetle. Like the person moving the creature moving the shit around. There's actually there is a use to the dung beetle. Whereas the cockroach is just a pest. That's really interesting.
I have to say, I really like Lucifer Stay a Good Devil just as an episode of television, and I find Nick Hoffmeister, the paparazzo she has a history with, to be very compelling.
I agree. I think it's very compelling and very sympathetic, especially for this show that's all about, ultimately this show is all about second chances. It's about the desperate desire for redemption. And that is characterized by that guy. I completely agree. I think the actor did a great job. I think the writers actually on characterizing him did a great job. What would it have killed them to, though? I know it would have been a different actor, but imagine the same piece of television, but Nick is played by a black man. It changes the whole, like, the fact that of the two sort of dung beetles, that we're seeing, the one who actually has a conscience and is seeking redemption is the white one. Like, it says something. I think it would have been really interesting if there had been that history and I mean, even if Josh remained the actor that played him and remained a black man, like if both were black men, I think it would have really nuanced it in more interesting and unexpected ways. Like the white guy who's lived a shitty life and is seeking redemption, and the black kid who hasn't learned and is ultimately a psychopath.
He's just
a psychopath.
He's a sociopath. Yeah.
Like there's something sort of trite about the racialized identity of those two. And I think that if we had substituted in a black man for the one seeking redemption, it would have brought in different things about his racialized identity. But the relationship and the fact that the one was seeking redemption and the other one wasn't, I don't know.
Well, it is not interesting. It's telling. This is, I mean, here we are in 2021. This was made back in 2016.
Right.
They're still casting a white guy as the lead and a white woman as his love interest. And yes, his brother is played by a black man. And that is something that they remark on for at least the first season, when people meet him and like, this is my brother, and people will be like, really? Instead of it just being like, okay, he's your brother. They're later on in the second season, when Charlotte Richards is his mother, and the actress playing Charlotte Richards is only 4 years older than Tom Ellis. Right. Like, that is like, she's your mother. That's fair. Just because like biologically, I don't get how that would work.
Right.
But DB Woodside and Tom Ellis are similar ages. I mean, I think DB Woodside's a few years older than him. And so he's his brother. Like, why does that have to be like a jaw dropper? Which is how it's treated. And that again is getting to what are our assumptions coming into all of these stories. And these are the assumptions of like white showrunners. And it wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the fact that only white showrunners get to get their TV made.
Right.
This would be if this were just, like, oh yeah, so we got, this show and that show and the other show, and they're all massively diverse. And then like, we've got Joe Henderson and LD Modrovich, and they've got, these two white folks as the leads. It's like, okay, that would be no big deal, but that's how it is for every show on the lineup.
Right.
And again, not that like the showrunners do appear to be working to challenge their own biases.
I think so
as
too.
we see the show go on.
Yeah. I think they're on their own road to redemption.
Yes. That's one of the reasons why I so appreciate Nick Hoffmeister's story, is because even when he tried to do good, he effed it up.
Yeah.
And like the moment at the end where Chloe is saying like, yeah, you screwed up, but you tried. And that's what's important. And that is something I need to hear, like with my perfectionist tendencies, and particularly when it comes to stuff that's very sensitive, like knowing like you're gonna screw up and it's okay, because you're trying and you're gonna get up and keep going again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whereas I don't feel like there's as a clear a lesson in The Would-Be Prince of Darkness. There's not as clear a like, this is what you can glean from what happened.
Yeah.
And not that every show has to have, Aesop's fable moral, but
right. I do think though, especially the title came from the which we haven't talked about yet. The title came from the identity thief who was parading as Lucifer. And I actually think that in that story and in the way he ultimately does react, Lucifer does, and respond when he has that moment when he has the kid in Lux.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he's going to punish him. And Mace is like, this is so hot. It's like you're punishing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think actually those words, not the hot part.
Yeah.
Like there is something actually really, there's a kernel of profundity, I think, in that, which also is a seed that has tendrils that go throughout the entire series about him punishing himself or feeling the need to punish himself or somehow like not feeling good enough. I mean, that is like the central theme of season 5B. So I do. I mean, I agree with you. There isn't as clear a like, so here's what you should understand from this, kids.
Yeah.
You know, as of an after school special. And also I do think there are still sort of seeds of profundity like in there.
Mm-hmm. I guess part of it with that with the would-be Prince of Darkness episode is like, maybe it's too subtle, or maybe it's because he didn't see that connection between him and Allie. The like, it's like you're punishing yourself, and he was realizing that's what he's doing, and he's realizing that, you know, he's taking the blame for it, but we don't see him feeling it really.
That's true. And
that's part of where I'm like, you need a little self-reflection, maybe not self-punishment, never self-flagellation, but you did take part in what led to this woman's death.
Yeah. We don't, and in fact, we don't even really see him make that connection so much, right? Like Linda makes it for us. Chloe makes it for us.
Yeah.
But and we also don't see him. Well, you said it. We don't see him feeling it. We see him sort of pursuing the real killer harder than one would expect in this third episode or this third, encounter. We don't see the feelings, which is not because Tom Ellis can't show it, because I think he's an amazing actor who like has control of his face in ways that like, damn,
it's amazing.
But I think it wasn't quite there. But all of that said, I mean, I love both episodes.
I know.
Right? Like I
know.
Like I don't want people to be left with a feeling that I'm like, yeah, that show is like I don't know, maybe a 3.5. Like we wouldn't be taking time out of our schedule to overthink it if it weren't just like remarkable television.
This show is amazing.
It's worth watching 3 and 4 and 5 times so that we can catch all of those little things and like overthink the casting and like notice and write down how many Black extras there are.
So here's something else that I found interesting, that because I've been thinking about this in particular. I think I shared with you an article about the LAPD. So it's been a few weeks ago now, but the LAPD decided to the incendiary. It was like seized fireworks.
Yes.
That they decided to
detonate in a residential area.
That was primarily Black, and
it killed someone.
It killed an older man, who I think it was something like he had a heart attack, but it also caused destruction, and it was just, you've got to be kidding me. Like what? Yeah. And their justification was they didn't want it on that highway. Like they didn't. So, and my view of the LAPD, like the first time I remember being in any way conscious of the LAPD was Rodney King.
That was for a lot of us.
And so, we grew up in Baltimore, Maryland.
Of a certain age.
Of a certain age, yes. We grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. We never had any reason to think about the LAPD. They were probably in TV shows and movies, that just because LA and New York, like LAPD and NYPD are the only ones that I know off the top of my head. But since then, I've had like certain things kind of support that first impression of the LAPD as being not super great. And so one of the things we've talked about, how I think that the showrunners are pretty much our age, in part because of the music that they choose, not for like the soundtrack, but for the characters to sing.
Yeah.
Because it's all from our youth.
Yeah.
But
shout out to Debbie Gibson.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. I mean, like Creep and Wonderwall. I mean, like high school for me. So, hell, even Wicked Game. I'm like, is that well known if you're not our age? Like, I don't know how much airtime that got. I just remember that video and you and I watching that video together going like, stop showing the woman in the underwear. We want more Chris Isaac.
You're telling all the secrets.
Yes. So anyway, because of that, there's some early things that they mention. So in the first episode, Lucifer refers to LAPD as your corrupt little organization. And then in Lucifer Stay Good Devil, he asks Chloe, like, how do you afford this house? Do you take bribes? And there are a couple other things that struck me with that.
Well,
and
in the very first scene of the show, he does bribe a police officer.
Yes, that's true. You're right. Very good point. And so I've been thinking about like there's another thing that I've seen on Twitter is people talking about how tough it is that when you enjoy what they call propaganda, like and this is
absolutely. I actually struggle with this a lot because I recently read We Do This Till We Free Us by Mariama Kaba, and she is a prison and police abolitionist, and she makes a really compelling case. And
to the point where after George Floyd last year, I'm no longer able to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I loved that show, but it's now just like I can't enjoy this.
Yeah.
And there's because there's magic and celestials and shit in Lucifer. I mean, that's my reason. And then I see that the writers do make some commentary, not all the time, but throughout they do make a little bit of commentary, and they have like a corrupt cop is a major part of the season 1 arc.
It's true.
But then they hand wave that away with Dan for season 2, which like I'm okay with because I love that character and I love his redemption. But one of the things that I was thinking about in The Would-Be Prince of Darkness was at the end when they like go to get the actual murderer to confess, they lie to him about Deborah, the ex-girlfriend's alibi. And I was thinking about the fact that police are allowed to lie and it's one of those things where like in that case and in like you can think of like, oh well, that makes sense that they're allowed to lie, but it's like the Shirley exception is like, oh well, they are outlawing abortion, but surely they'll leave it a place for a woman who's would die without one. Surely there's an exception for incest. And so that's police are allowed to lie. Well, surely that's not going to be true in the case of, whatever. And I've heard stories of someone was telling me about they went to see Obama speak outside of DC when he was running in 2008, and police were directing people to these side streets where it said no parking. Police said, no, you're allowed to park there for now, come back to their cars, and they'd all been towed because they were lying. I'm like, surely that can't be okay. Yeah, it is. So I'm kind of wrestling with the propaganda aspect of Lucifer and the fact that police procedurals are such a common type of entertainment, to the point where that's why this show got greenlit.
Well, it's such a default vehicle. No, I think that's exactly it. I mean, that was what some of the contemporaneous reviewers were critiquing when this show was first released. Like, why is it a procedural? And it has become such a default that when I read that, I was like, yeah, but what else would it be that would be episodic? Like what, Tracie? You can't think of any other like vehicle for an episodic storytelling. Like it has become such a default. It's like it is the chassis on which we build everything, which is really
Why is that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's partially is the propaganda aspects
Mhm.
of it, and the ways in which we have valorized law enforcement. Well, I think we have overthunk it.
You thunk?
enough for one episode. What do you think?
Yeah, that's probably enough overthinking. We did not even get into my pet peeve of when he wakes up from threesomes and the women are still wearing bras and panties.
Well, it is Fox. It is broadcast television.
But it's just like sheet placement. I don't know. Just bras, really.
Also, they never wake up, you know? Like, he's always the first to wake up, and they're just like,
well,
to the world.
I mean, no. That fits. He's supposed to be really good.
All right. And with that, I really do think we need to stop.